Hello and welcome for this week's Holistic Creative Chat. And this week we have Jen Trulson, life coach and lover of life, as you say on your website. And Jen says that she loves to help women come home to themselves. Jen, I love that.
I know, I do too.
Even just saying that and what that implies feels so spacious. And
Yeah, my hand just went right to my heart. Because I have been through that, not being home with myself, I just remember vividly that point of coming home to myself. And I was like, I want every woman to feel this way. I want every woman.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. So the first question I like to begin with is to just ask you if you could tell us a little bit either what your current creative practice is looking like or how creative process is showing up in your life and or the work you do with others.
Okay, excellent. It's funny because I, like many people, feel like I'm not creative.
Yeah.
And I know that that is not true. And I've really enjoyed becoming this creative being again and knowing that that looks so many different ways. And I really feel like actually with my creative process right now, I'm in transition. And I think that's the beauty of our creative practices and our daily practices is it takes on this ebb and flow. And for me, I know I love my daily practice. When I don't do a daily practice, I just feel off. And thank goodness I have friends that know me well enough because I'll be feeling off and they'll say, "Are you doing your daily practice?" And so it brings me back to that place. And I've just kind of come out of one of those places of feeling a little bit off. And I'm like, okay, I'm not sitting in stillness. So my creative practice, I am coming around to the
Yeah.
to the answer. So right now, I notice that I'm not sitting and taking that 5 to 30 minutes in the morning for myself, whether it's sitting in silence. I tend to get bored easy, and so I don't like routine, but I really do need structure.
Yeah.
So I need that for myself, but I don't want it to be the same thing. So I like have this basket of goodies for me. And I think that's what keeps it creative too. Love pulling oracle cards. I love journaling. I love sitting in stillness. I love feeding my mind and my soul with a daily devotion. And right now, actually for the last year, it's been Mark Nepo's Book of Awakening.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Just that, yeah, I love that. Love that book, So, really just, again, I think it's a beautiful process as well because I'm tuning into what feels good. Sometimes it's turning up my music and dancing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a few things that don't waver. I may forget to do them. Like I said, I just kind of got out of this, ebb and getting back into my flow again. And when I'm in the flow and those things that don't change are, waking up and just checking in with how I feel and letting myself feel however that is for a minute or two. But, normally it's tired. I wake up and even if I had a good rest, I'm still tired. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit here and let myself consciously feel tired for a minute or two. And then I decide, how do I want to feel? I want to offer that and, to the universe, to the divine, whatever, and consciously just say, how do I want to feel today? What would feel really good? And then when I declare that, offering it and releasing it, and then it's like, okay, what do I want to do for my creative practice?
Yeah.
Are you hearing me okay?
I am. I'm hearing you fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I love that you have so many things that you've touched on there that I can relate to and that I think are so important. And I love that you're so flexible with what your practice is going to look like. Like you acknowledge that you need structure, and yet you also acknowledge that it can change from day to day what that structure or container looks like. And I often think of it for myself like I have this medicine bag and of tricks, and I've learned what little tricks will work for me to help me get centered. And you mentioned a couple of times in there the importance of stillness. And I think sometimes when we talk about creativity and creative process and creative practice, we instantly think action and engagement. But that stillness piece is one of the most important parts of the creative process, I find, in my experience.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I love that you mentioned that because it is one of the biggest things in coming home to ourselves and accessing that place of when we tell ourselves we're not creative or we don't know what feels creative. That place of stillness can just bring me right back to, oh, this is what feels really juicy and good right now.
And it makes me think is what I believe is that, we can't not be creative. We're inherently creative by the fact that we're breathing. And so what we're often sensing is when we feel that disconnect, what's really happening is that we're not tapped into that awareness of the creativity that's always moving through us. And so that stillness time or that movement, like when you put music on and you want to dance, I'm the same way. I do that too. And that taps us back into like, oh, it's here. It's always here with me. And it's just where is my attention at, Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
I love that you added that because you're right. It is who we are. Sometimes we're just not consciously connected to that. You have the most beautiful blue eyes. Can I
Oh,
just say
thank
that?
you. Aren't you sweet? Oh, I'll take that. Yeah. Aw. Yeah, I imagine that you find this with the women that you work with too. I know one of the things that I see across the board a lot with women is like what you're saying is like we often feel like we're not creative or like we're not doing the things that are creative. And so much of the work that I often do with women when I mentor women is about helping them see how they're already being creative in their life. And they're already doing very creative things all the time. And
Right.
I do it to myself too. And I'm a consciously creative person all the time. That's my livelihood and what I love to do now, and my devotion. But I still get into funks where I'm like, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, blah, blah, blah. And it's really about like shifting that perspective. And instead of saying, what am I not doing? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And where's
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. You know what? And I love that too. There's two things that I want to. I'm like, if I don't close my eyes, I will forget them. Two things that I wanted to touch on there. One was I just was working with a client and she's like, gosh, I used to have a daily practice and I'm out of it and I just need some help getting back to what that looks like for me and how can I squeeze it in? And I'm like, okay, first of all, how can it be something you look forward to?
Yeah.
How can it be that some and what was so beautiful about it was she spends time with her plants every morning. And she didn't have to add anything. All she had to do was change that perspective and be consciously aware that that was her daily practice.
Mm.
And she was just like, oh my gosh. So, like you were saying, it's like
Yeah.
we already are, but it's shifting the perspective and seeing consciously that we are being creative in what we're already doing.
Yeah.
I love that. And I also, when we were talking about the stillness, I, again, it was funny before we talked this morning. I was like, oh, I just want to share this and this and that. And I have no idea what she's going to ask, but here it popped up is the whole creativity thing you were mentioning. A lot of times we think it's about action and doing something. But I think it is, like you said, one of my favorite things to say is doobie 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 do, because it's like we're doing and we're being and we're doing and we're being, but we have to have that being because it's always like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And it's like, ooh, how can I just be in this right now?
Mm-hmm.
Be with myself, be with this beautiful space. You know, even like I'm looking at some of the artwork
Mm.
or the hangings on your wall behind you, and I'm like, just being with those feels so yummy.
Oh, thank you. And I love that doobie doobie doo. I'm gonna remember that. That's great. You got a little song to it there too.
Right?
And it's so true. And it's what enriches our experience of being present is consciously kind of like tugging on those each of those anchors. Like here I am doing. Here I am. Oh, this, that
Yeah.
being instantly. It's like there's something I know for me anyway. Like as I move with my practice, the conscious coming back to the being or the breathing, whatever you use as your anchor in that moment to get present. It literally it's instantaneous. It doesn't take long at all, and it is on such a cellular level. You feel it just by shifting the attention to that. And
Absolutely.
then the doing, whatever doing you're in the middle of, becomes that much more alive feeling.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah.
It's one of my words for the year is alive.
Oh, I love that. Such a good word.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. So, do you have any? Well, you did mention this already. I was going to ask you if you had any like strong themes that are coming up for you, and I feel like you sort of touched on. So when I think of that, like what I'm thinking is like, what are the things that you kind of come up to face or against, or whatever language we want to put there. But you were saying like you kind of get out of your practice sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so speak a little bit more to that, if you could.
Okay. Yeah, I think that and I say this often is distraction is our disease. This, it's our society and it's our culture. And we
Yeah.
have this beautiful thing called technology now that is so magical. And yet, everything has its, pros and cons, or,
Yeah.
it can be helpful or it can be taking us away from. And we end up, at least I end up, and I have three, I have one child in college, I have two in high school, I have one that's graduating this year, so it's busy time, busy life.
Yeah.
We're all busy in whatever our circumstances are. And we tend to just sometimes start sleepwalking again.
Yeah.
And that's what, led me into coaching in the first place, was realizing, gosh, I every day is such a gift. Even if I want to curl up on the ball and even if I want to curl up in a ball on the couch and cry. I mean, it's still such a gift to feel,
Yeah.
right? To be alive and be aware that that's what would feel good in that moment, instead of letting life kind of lead me around. And, coming out of the holidays, and then I watch my tendencies. I love following the cycles of the moon and the lunar flow. And so I'm on to myself, and when you start to do that, and be onto yourself and do the work and be more aware and more conscious, you catch yourself quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's beautiful. But, I let a lot of just little things in my life kind of pull me away, and I wasn't sitting down in that stillness to
Yeah.
come back home to myself. And and my first clue is when I'm feeling off and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling funky. What is going on? Oh, I've stepped away from myself. I'm going to come back home.
You know what I wonder too, hearing you speak, and as I'm relating to so much of what you're saying, and I'm thinking about actually the title of what you intend to bring to Spectrum this year, and the
Yeah.
relationship between, which the title is Surrender to Surprise, by the way. And so the relationship between when we get in that funk or that routine of distraction where we're not, as being fully aware, or in our practice or whatever all of that is, when we're feeling just kind of, and we realize what that is, how does that relate to your relationship with surprise and
Mm.
curiosity? I'm curious how that works for you, because for me, there's a connection.
Okay. Oh, and I'm so curious to hear what yours is. Um, yeah, as you put it that way, for me, it's meeting myself with tenderness and like being surprised that I stepped away, and meeting myself with that compassion and love instead of beating myself up
Yeah.
that I went into that place or I allowed myself to get pulled away. Um, and then just being curious is like, ooh, when did I step away and what for? And just kind of spending a little bit, and not having to analyze it, but being genuinely curious about it. It's like, oh, what happened? Because I think then when I shine the light on that, again, I'm able to maybe catch myself quicker
Yeah.
the following time.
Yeah, like, oh look, there I go doing that again. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
makes me think of Ram Dass. He always says, there I am in that predicament again. Like,
I love him.
yeah, I love that. And
Yeah.
and
What
for
about
me, like, I
you?
love too that you bring the surprise and curiosity to the reflection of the present moment. And then, like, for me, where I instantly go is like when I sense that I'm in that rut or something, I come back to this notion of like, I'm my perspective has become too narrow. And
Mm.
so my job, I look at it as almost like my job then is to wake up the curiosity again. Because when I'm
Ah,
in that rut, it's sort of like my curiosity is asleep. I'm not wanting
yeah.
to engage with new experience or something like that.
Exactly.
And
Because
so,
one of the pieces,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
cut you off.
No, you go right ahead.
Because one of the pieces that I'm bringing to my offering is how to, in a daily practice, open up to that curiosity and surprise for the day. And that's one of my favorite things to do too, because sometimes I get up and, many more times than not, I wake up and I'm tired and I'm just kind of like, okay, another day. This is what's on the calendar, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. But you know what? And I always will, again, when I'm conscious and aware and in my flow, I am always wondering, what will today bring?
Yeah.
Like, who am I going to talk to? Or what different road am I going to drive down that I've never driven down before just for the heck of it? And like, what am I going to discover? Um, who am I maybe going to be able to surprise with something? Like, I just wonder what surprises are going to come for the day because, and that's why they call it, right? Uh, the today is a gift. The presence,
Hmm.
whatever that saying is. I am horrible at
So I am too. I can never
exact
remember
saying.
quotes or jokes exactly.
I can't either.
Yeah,
But
but
you did
yeah.
Ram Dass. That
Right.
was
Yes.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I love
The
that.
presence is a gift.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's
Hmm.
like that is there's I just, and that's part of what makes me feel alive
Yeah.
is having that curiosity and wonder in the morning of I'm so excited. Like, what's going to happen today that I have no idea?
Yeah.
Because we don't,
Right.
right? And
Where's the
even
adventure
though,
in today, even in the
yes,
ordinary? Yeah.
yes,
I love that.
exactly. Yeah.
So I'm going to circle back around a little bit
Okay.
to, and for me, it's all so inherently related. And I know you'll be able to pull this question around too, but this is the question I ask everybody. And it's, how do you define healing today?
Mm. Whew, I love that today
Hmm.
because um, how do I define healing today? I just, again, to me, it's a coming home to yourself. It's a being in your body. It's being with yourself so tenderly and full of love and compassion and meeting yourself where you are and being there for you.
Mm.
What do I need most right now?
Yeah.
It's the kindest thing I could do for myself, you
Love
know?
that.
Yeah.
Oh, Jen, thank you so much for having this chat with us today.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. So much fun connecting.
yeah, thanks everybody for listening.
Bye.